welcome to HITC Sport, and right, success in football, it hinges on career moves. We've seen it. Good players who should have had great careers, but instead just wasted their potential after some terrible decisions. So let's take a look at every Premier League club and find one player who would have ruined his career had he gone through with a certain move. Right, let's have a look. Arsenal, Alexandre Lacazette to Newcastle. Alright, let's be honest. Alexandre Lacazette's agent is probably beating his client over the head on a daily basis. This guy is supremely talented, but is still nearly 30 years old and scoring less than 10 goals a season for a club halfway down the league. Add to the fact he hasn't played for France since 2017, he clearly made a wrong move somewhere. But lads, it could have been much worse. Back in the summer of 2014, Newcastle United had a bid rejected for this guy while out in Lyon. Had he said yes, he'd be stepping into a circus soon to be run by John Carver, followed by Steve McLaren and relegation. If this is how Lacazette wanted to spend the prime years of his career, then fine. Being fed balls by Jack Colback and Sammy Amiobi, then yeah, great. But realistically, he'd rather chew a handful of human toes. Aston Villa, Jack Grealish to Middlesbrough. Listen, I don't know how true this was, but back in January 2017, a 21-year-old Jack Grealish was linked with a move to Middlesbrough. Apparently offered as a makeweight to sign Jordan Rhodes. God, this would have been an awful move for all parties involved. I can't think of a player less suited to Tony Pulis than Jack Grealish. Christ, he'd probably have turned him into the next Glenn Whelan. Any bit of attacking flair would have been squeezed out his eyeballs. Bournemouth, Dan Gosling to Blackburn. In Dan Gosling's 15 seasons of professional football, he's only spent 4 of them outside the top flight. This guy is the definition of painfully average. So fair play, his agent should probably be knighted by the Queen. It could have been so very different though. Back in 2012, while stuffed on the Newcastle bench, he was linked with a move to Blackburn. Considering this was just 9 months after the club had tried to sign Ronaldinho, you could already see that their ambitions were declining, and fast. Gosling has made 156 Premier League appearances since then. Had he gone to Ewood Park, then the last ever top flight game of his career would have been 8 bastard years ago. He'd just have been trapped in the Championship forever. Brighton, Lewis Dunk to Fulham. So Lewis Dunk has now established himself as a mid-table Premier League player. Right, well done for sticking out at Brighton. Sometimes loyalty pays off, because had you made that £4 million move to Fulham in 2015, oh good Christ, sure, living in West London would be nice, but you'd also be signing up for a career of Championship football with one disastrous relegation from the Premier League. Not great. So you could pretty much kiss goodbye ever playing for your country. Burnley, Aaron Lennon to Al Ahly. Alright, Aaron Lennon's career is currently stuffed down a well while stuck on the Burnley bench, but it could have been finished in 2014. At just 27 years of age, this former England international, a guy who once replaced David Beckham at a World Cup, he could have been spending his peak years of his career out in Saudi Arabia with Al Ahly. Sure, he'd have a bank account filled with gold and would probably drink pints of cash for lunch, but that is a footballing wasteland. He wouldn't want that. Chelsea, Mason Mount to Rangers. It's fair to say Mason Mount is having the year of his life. Not only is he playing week in week out for his boyhood Chelsea, under his midfield hero, he's also scoring goals for his country. But how easily he could have ended up an irrelevant journeyman, lost in the sea of pig muck that is Scottish football. Before that breakthrough loan under Frank Lampard at Derby County, Mount was heavily tipped to quit Chelsea and join Stevie G at Rangers. Big club, sure, but did he really want to spend his formative years travelling to the likes of Ross County and Kilmarnock? Southgate would probably rather rip off his own nutsack than ever give an international cap to somebody up in Scotland. Crystal Palace, Gary Cahill to Arsenal. Gary Cahill is one of those who maximised every sinew of his career. Let's be honest, this fella was just another soda British centre half. No better than Phil Jagielka. And yet, because of one good career move, he's a 2-time Premier League winner, European champion with 2 FA Cup medals, 2 Europa Leagues and a League Cup. It's a trophy cabinet that would rival most footballers on planet Earth. He's one of the most successful English footballers of all time. And yet, it could have been so very different. 6 months before swapping Bolton for Chelsea, this fella was the subject of a £6 million bid from Arsenal. And so had he gone there, he'd have just ended his career with 3 FA Cup medals and would have a headache from the amount of criticism he would get every bastard week. Everton, Theo Walcott to Man City. Theo Walcott is probably currently tearing chunks out of his own beard. He's 31 and stuck on the Everton bench, after a career where he's flattered to deceive. Hyped as the next Thierry Henry, he instead just wound up the symbol of Arsenal's sad decline. But oh, it could have been much worse. 2012 was the best year of this man's life. He was scoring at tournaments for his country, had become a 20-goal-a-season player for Arsenal, scored hat-tricks against both Newcastle and Reading, and also spent the year flirting with other clubs. Premier League champions Man City were interested, but you know who they signed instead? Scott Sinclair. Walcott moving to Etihad at 23 years of age would have absolutely torn his career apart. He'd probably start about 5 games a season. Then where would he be now? probably chucked out at Preston North End. Leicester, Kasper Schmeichel to Hull. Well, I could go for the obvious one. Leicester turning down a bid for Kasper Schmeichel back in the summer 2013 from Hull City. Had Schmeichel made that move, there'd be no Premier League medal, not a single minute of Champions League football, no Danish Player of the Year awards, just a career filled with relegations and Championship football. Spending the peak years of his career shouting at a fence filled with Alex Bruce and Paul McShane. He probably wouldn't be able to look his dad in the face. Liverpool, Roberto Firmino to Man United. Where do you start? Jordan Henderson's move to Fulham back in 2011 would probably have just turned him into the next Scott Parker, spending half of his life fighting relegation battles. Had Andy Robertson swapped Hull City for West Ham in 2016, he'd be retiring without a single medal to his name. But I'm going for Roberto Firmino. When Man United agreed a £13 million fee with Hoffenheim back in June 2015, had he moved to Old Trafford, he'd have been ruined. A desperate Louis van Gaal clinging to his job would not be happy with just 10 goals a season from a centre forward. Jose Mourinho would have simply flung him in a bin for a more traditional physical target man. Christ, this fella would have been the next Angel Di Maria. An underappreciated talent struggling to survive at a club stuck in permanent transition with an angry fan base just looking for players to blame. Man City, Sergio Aguero to Tottenham. But I could go for when Raheem Sterling nearly ended up at Arsenal. That would have turned him into the next Theo Walker without a shadow of a doubt. But no, January 2011. Back when Chelsea should have been looking to sign Sergio Aguero from Atletico Madrid, instead of chucking 50 million at Fernando Torres, instead it was Spurs failing with a nearly £40 million bid. Lads, can you imagine if this had happened? Aguero spending his life at Spurs? He'd have been the Argentine Harry Kane. A career full of personal records and golden boots, but with less silverware than Nathan Dyer. Christ above. Man United, Harry Maguire to Middlesbrough. Well, I could touch on Daniel James's failed move from Swansea to Leeds last year, just months before winding up at Old Trafford. So unless he decided to be the next Alan Smith, that would have been him kissing his dream move goodbye. But no, instead Harry Maguire. The most expensive defender in world football, an England star, Man United captain, and yet he was one career decision away from becoming the next Ben Gibson. 4 years ago, Middlesbrough were bidding £4 million to take him from Hull City. Had he gone to the Riverside, he'd have a pretty average career, and probably wouldn't have gone to the World Cup either. Newcastle, JAMAAL LASCELLES to QPR. Listen, JAMAAL LASCELLES is in a good place in his career right now. There's nothing particularly special about this guy. He could well have spent his entire career in the Championship. Instead, he's the captain of a massive club, having played under one of the most tactically astute managers of all time. He's worshipped by the fans, and yet he could have just been another all-servant at QPR. Back in July 2014, at just 20 years of age, he was inches from swapping Nottingham Forest for QPR. So you'd have his reputation blotted by being part of that big bag of rubbish relegated from the Premier League in 2015, and when you're part of a defence that concedes 60 bastard goals, nobody really wants to sign you. Christ, he'd have been the next Nedum Onawoa. Norwich, Tim Krul to Chelsea. Tim Krul has been linked with Chelsea for half his life. It would have been a wrong move. Back in 2008, the Dutch teenage goalie was heavily backed to quit Newcastle for Stamford Bridge. Now on one hand, sure, he wouldn't have a career stained with 2 relegations, but he also wouldn't have played nearly 200 Premier League games. He'd have been another Asmar Begovic or Willie Caballero, staples of the Stamford Bridge bench. Christ, he'd have been the next Stuart Taylor. And no, I'm pretty sure Van Gaal wouldn't have trusted a Chelsea bench warmer for a World Cup quarter-final penalty shootout. Sheffield United, Oliver Norwood to Hull. Oliver Norwood's career has taken off at Sheffield United. After being largely ignored at Brighton, just immediately deemed unfit for Premier League football, he was almost sold to Hull City in August 2018. Had he done that, he'd probably be retiring without a single minute of Premier League football to his name. Instead, he's starting week in, week out for a club pushing for Europe. Southampton, Danny Ings to Sunderland. Alright, for Sunderland, this would have been a damn good move. In August 2016, David Moyes tried to pair Jermaine Defoe with Danny Ings from Liverpool. A good strike force, but it still wouldn't have kept them up. The club were a sinking stone. Had Ings, after a season in the Anfield treatment room, picked up a second relegation in 3 years, he'd probably have been left to rot in the Championship for the rest of his career. Tottenham, Harry Kane to Leeds. Well, I could go for Son Heung-min, but after one season at Spurs, was almost chucked back into a German relegation battle with Wolfsburg. Christ, that would have been rough. But no, instead Harry Kane, before his breakthrough in the Spurs first team, he was almost sold to Leeds in 2014. That would have killed his career stone dead. Sure, he could have scored a bucket load in the Championship, but after failing to cut it at Spurs, would have just been signed by someone like Crystal Palace, and that would be his legacy. A journeyman mid-table footballer with about 5 England caps to his name. Christ above. Watford, Danny Welbeck to Hull. Listen, Danny Welbeck has had a pretty wretched last 6 years since leaving Man United, but at Arsenal there were some highlights. He won an FA Cup, scored a Champions League hat-trick, knocked his former club out of the FA Cup, and kept playing for England. Had he instead gone to Hull City in 2014, there'd be none of that. Just relegations. West Ham, Jack Wilshere to Man City. Yes, Jack Wilshere's career is already in tatters. But he could have been like Jack Rodwell. This guy was essentially forced out of Arsenal. But could he really lived with himself? When after lifting the FA Cup, he just stormed off to Man City in a £40 million move back in 2015. Do you really think he was getting past either David Silva or Yaya Toure? Within a year he'd have Pep Guardiola as manager, A guy who dismissed his talents back in 2011. He'd have never got a single minute on the pitch. Wolves ADAMA TRAORE to Newcastle. Alright, you see the form ADAMA TRAORE is now showing at Wolves, playing European football for a club on the up. Suddenly he's been linked with big money moves to Europe's elite. The power of a good career move. Because had he swapped Middlesbrough for Newcastle in the summer 2017, it would be just awful. Rafa Benitez is a great manager, yes, but is he really the type of guy you want in charge of attacking flair? Stuck on the right wing at a club in turmoil and currently managed by Steve Bruce? Alright, that's the end of it, lads. Right, some of these career moves would have been horrible. I think we can all agree on that. Horrendous potential career moves that would have shoved these players' careers in a bin. Right, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, I'll talk to you in a while.